Again, good evening, everyone. What a great attendance. This is wonderful to see all of your participation here this evening. We want to welcome you to our 2012 Candidates Forum. And the mission of the Chamber is just to promote a business-friendly environment, also to enhance the quality of life and the economy here in the city of Rancho Cucamonga. So with that being said, this is the reason why the Chamber Board of Directors elected to introduce a policy to host a candidates forum on election years. So the attendees, along with the viewing audience, can hear the candidates' answers to pertinent questions regarding the economy, the quality of life in Rancho Cucamonga. By listening to the answers and the responses that are provided, we're hopeful that you can come to your own conclusion as to which candidate best fits the position they're going after. So hopefully you'll find that to be the case here this evening. So without further ado, please, it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this evening event, Mr. Christian Nelson of the regional manager of the Southern California local public. Let me try that again. Christian Nelson, regional manager of local public affairs for Southern California Edison.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, our congressional candidates, and also our candidates for Assembly, City Council, and Cucamonga Valley Water District. Thank you for participating in this forum, sponsored by the Rancho Cucamonga Chamber of Commerce in Southern California, Edison. The format for this evening will be as follows. There will be 90-second candidate introduction of personal background prior to the questions and answers. There will be an individual in front of the candidate stage with a 1 minute, 30, and 15-second card and a stop card. Please adhere to the time allotted, as this forum is being taped for broadcast during the month of October. All candidates who have filed for office have been invited to the forum. At this time, because we are taping and because we do have a crowd and we want to be respectful of our candidates, I would just ask that everybody would turn off your cell phones at this time, or at least set them on stun. Proper decorum, of course, will be expected. Any outbursts will not be tolerated. Candidates have, well, there's only two of them, so they've randomly drawn their seating position by sitting. All questions that they'll be responding to have been received from the Rancho Cucamonga Chamber members. The following questions will be randomly drawn for our candidates. Each one will have 3 minutes to respond. Each candidate will answer 3 questions each. They may choose to rebut the question or the answer given immediately prior if they so choose. After all candidates have had an opportunity to address the questions, we will then return to closing remarks. During the segment, there will be 2 time card checks, a 30-second and 15-second, and stop. We ask that each candidate adhere to the time allotment, as this forum, again, is being taped. So we will begin. We began with a coin toss. Senator Dutton won and has elected to give our opening remarks first. Senator?
That work? Okay, restart the clock. Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to address you tonight. I've been in the city now for quite a while. I first moved into Rancho Cucamonga in 1977. I actually came to the area in '74 and first started out in the city of Upland. Been a very active small business owner here in the area. Been involved in a lot of different programs, a lot of different charitable organizations, the West End Red Cross, the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, Chamber of Commerce, and so on. Been involved in a lot of activities around here. And then in 1998, decided to run for the city council. We had an open seat. I served on this it was my pleasure to serve on the city council Rancho Cucamonga for 4.5 years. And then because Bill Leonard was termed out, I ran for the assembly and won that election. And then Jim Brulte was termed out, and I ran for Jim Brulte's seat, the state senate seat I currently hold, and that was back in 2004. I've done the best I can to be that advocate for small business. The larger businesses seem to have plenty of people speaking on their behalf, but it was kind of my belief, and especially when I was a chamber president and a member of the board of directors, that it's a small business owner that really doesn't have much of an opportunity to have somebody up there fighting for them. And I've always believed that a small business community, the healthier a small business community is, the stronger the communities are going to be. And so you'll find that I've been an advocate for a variety of types of programs. It didn't matter what it was. Recently it was the ADA legislation that I passed, or got passed, to deal with some of the frivolous lawsuits that small businesses are being victimized with. I also have been actively involved. As you know, my professional background is that of a real estate asset manager, and been involved in a lot of different types of real estate investments. Therefore, I'm very much infrastructure oriented. I've done a lot to try to bring infrastructure to the area. And most recent was the 2006 transportation bond. My main objective there was to try to make sure that we got more than just the scraps and the leftovers. And as a result of those efforts, the League of Cities named me Legislator of the Year. We came up with a formula that did give every city in the state a guaranteed issue of money. And the best part about that program was that we got the county of San Bernardino and Riverside County, the two counties I represent as a state senator. We actually got them together to write the process by which we could go in and get the money. So I think I've demonstrated my willingness to get in there and fight for you. I believe I'm now turned out in the Senate, and the Congress is an open seat. I felt that I could serve the community well and the region well by going to Congress. So thank you for this opportunity to talk to you, and I look forward to your questions.
And Congressman Miller, your introductory remarks.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for hosting the event this evening in Rancho Cucamonga. It's a pleasure to be here. I've represented San Bernardino County for 14 years in Congress. I'm told that you can't hear me, so I'll try again. Is that better? Then the most important issue facing our country are jobs. The Inland Empire has been hit the hardest with the downturn in the recession. But based on my voting record for all the years I've been in the State Assembly and Congress, I'm honored to be endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the California Chamber of Commerce, the California Republican Party, the U.S. Real Estate Association, the California Realtors, NFIB, and many other business groups, because I believe that we need to do what we can to bring jobs back to the Inland Empire and back to this country. The biggest issue facing businesses today are taxes and regulation. Regulation is nothing more than a de facto tax. What we have to do is streamline the process, allow businesses to expand, to operate. And you can't tell me if you're pro-labor, you're not pro-business, because if you really believe in doing everything you can for working people, you have to create an environment that enables businesses to be able to grow, to prosper, and expand. And this area has been hit the hardest by housing. That's why I'm proud of my endorsement by the Realtors. I've worked on legislation because of my seniority on the Financial Services Committee. We need to do everything we can to stabilize the housing market, to keep people's home prices back. We need to put people to work. Many people in our industry have left the state. In fact, we're losing 250,000 people every year in California because of the regulation taxes imposed upon you by Sacramento. That has to change. We can't continue to grow government at your expense. We can't continue to tax you and spend it on reasons that we shouldn't be even taxing you for. This country has to change. We have a $16 trillion deficit that our kids and grandkids have to pay. They can't pay it off. 10 years from now, Medicare will be bankrupt. 20 years from now, Social Security will be bankrupt. When they started Social Security, 60 people paid for every one person receiving it. In 20 years, we'll be having 2 people work for every one person on Social Security. Now think about our grandkids. 2 people working, 1 person retired. They can't pay the taxes locally, county-wide, state-wise, and the federal income tax, plus pay Social Security and Medicare and make it work in the end. Every proposal that's been proposed, even by my good friend Paul Ryan, who's endorsed me for Congress, says we need to look at everybody 55 years and older. We're on the same system we've always had. But how do we deal with younger people? How do we make sure it's solvent and viable for them in the future? This country has to change. We have to get realistic. We cannot continue to ask people to work and take their money. We can't expect businesses to invest when we take and confiscate the liquidity they have. Every dollar we take out of the marketplace hurts businesses. You got a situation coming in January. The Bush tax cuts of 2001, 2003 expire. Plus, we have about $1.3 trillion worth of cuts over the next 10 years that start taking place in January. Bernanke said, if we allow this to happen, we'll be in a worse recession than started in 2007 and 2008. We need to change it. We cannot continue with the status quo. Things have to be different in the future. Thank you for having me.
And as Senator Dutton opened first, Congressman Miller will receive the first question.
Is it a 2-minute we have to respond to this?
3.
3, okay.
3 minutes.
Good.
What experience do you have dealing with the local business community?
I've spent my career as a businessman. When in my early 20s, I started as a builder in this area. I was a builder and a realtor. That's why I think if you look at my endorsement list, it speaks for itself. You need to get to know the people you represent. I've been to Congress for 14 years. I fly home every week. I've stayed 2 weekends voluntarily in Washington over the 14 years. I got stuck there on 9/11. Some other times we had to stay to vote. But I come home every week. There's a reason. When I go to church, I talk to people. They tell me what's important to them. I love to go to Costco. I hate to say it, but I'm a grazer. I love to go aisle to aisle, and people come up and talk to you. They tell you things that are important to them, things that mean things to them. I think we need to do what we can to get businesses back. I did the reauthorization for Export-Import Bank, increased it by 40% funding. Now, 2% of all the exports in this country are funded by Export-Import Bank. What we did, we made sure that $100 million have been lent here locally. We put thousands of people back to work. In fact, there's one local builder and contractor loan that has $18 million worth of loans this year alone through that. We need to say, how do we become more business friendly? Dodd-Frank Act that passed is just stifling business. In fact, it's supposed to meant to deal nothing but Wall Street and issues like that. Dodd-Frank deals with something called the Democratic Republic of the Congo. What it says, they're conflict materials, minerals from that country that are bought and sold throughout the world, but there's slavery in that country. Women are being raped in that country. I really feel bad for the people in that country. What we've done through Dodd-Frank, and it was a Democrat, people that put it in a conference committee, it says that anything that comes from that country, if you use it in your product, has to be listed as coming from a country that supports slavery and rape of women. The problem is, you're guilty unless you can prove yourself innocent. If you have an iPhone, there's materials in there that could come from that region. If you're wearing a suit tonight with thread and buttons, there's material in there that could come from that region. The problem is if you buy anything from China, you have to put it in there that your material does state that. If you work for Boeing, for General Motors, for Ford, if you're a subcontractor and they buy a million different parts, they each one have to go through and assess what they use to build that product with. It's projected next year alone to cost American businesses $19 billion to prove they're innocent. And like I said, in most cases, you cannot prove you're innocent. That's ridiculous. We have to get back to common sense reality. People want to use their property in this region. The Delhi sand-loving fly, the San Bernardino kangaroo rat, the Riverside kangaroo rat. Now, how many of you want to live next to rat or fly habitat? Raise your hand. Think about it. Our grandparents were smart. They used to swat flies and poison rats. Now we set aside habitat for it. And you own the habitat. Now, that's government outrage at its worst. We need to change this country, get back to basics. Think of people first. Yes, we're in an environment that has animals and wildlife and weeds and flora and fauna, but we're part of it too. They're not important, more important than we are. Thank you.
It's okay, you can call. Our next question for Senator Dutton. Public opinion and perception of elected officials are at an all-time low. What will you do to reinstill the confidence of our public?
Well, hopefully I'll never be investigated for anything. That is what, look, here in San Bernardino County, we've had a lot of trouble. Our elected officials have let us down in some cases, and frankly, that's just not, it's just not excusable. That's just no excuse for it. In order for us to move forward, and frankly, on the issue of confidence in your elected officials, the bottom line comes down is that also leads to people wanting to do business in your local community and area. If they don't feel that they can get a square deal from your elected officials at the very top, then of course they're going to be reluctant to want to go into that area, or they'll consider it to be a higher risk factor. And so in my case here, I think bottom line comes down, I think term limits is also an excellent idea because it'll stop people from getting too far entrenched. And I believe that we can actually turn this situation totally around. You know, one of the things that we've had happen here in San Bernardino County, it just seems after a certain period of time that something happens. There's been some kind of public trust that's been violated or something of that nature, and I've always prided myself on trying to be a true citizen statesman, somebody who's actually here in the district. I come and shop in our stores. I talk to you on a regular basis. We also have a philosophy in my office, and that is the truth will set us free. we happen to send out a lot of information to the local community to make sure that you actually see, actual debates and things that have taken place on the floor. We don't take it to chance that just because Cal Channel's there that some reason you're going to pick it up. But, the one thing that I feel good about is I've been endorsed by Michael Ramus, the district attorney for the state, for County of San Bernardino, also Rod Hoops, the sheriff of San Bernardino County. I've been endorsed by PROAC, the Police Officers Resource Association, our local firefighters, numerous city council members, board of supervisor. I think I've demonstrated that the people can have confidence in me that I'll give them a square deal, and I'm going to fight for them. And I think that's what you're going to have to restore the confidence by making sure people feel that you're there for them and not for somebody else or for yourself.
Congressman Miller, the next question for you. In what way or ways exactly do you feel you are better suited for the office than your opponent?
Bob and I have both been in public service for many years. We've both been in the private sector. I served 4 years in the state legislature, and I think I was the only Republican to chair the Budget Committee in the last 65 or 70 years. I've been in Congress for 14 years. And I know term limits is a debate many have, but in Congress, most things are done by seniority. I'm a senior member of Transportation, senior member of Financial Services Committee. When the 2005 Transportation Bill was put out, I authored language in that bill that said if you meet state environmental requirements are the same as federal environmental requirements, you don't have to go through both processes. I offered the language that allowed California to be the first state in the union to enact that policy. Now when we want to build a highway in this state, we save 17 months on process time and 30 months on delivery time. That means jobs to this state and jobs to the country. I just authored a bill in the new transportation bill that lets every state in the nation do the same thing. I also authored the language that allowed the municipalities like Rancho Cucamonga and the counties to do it, but Barbara Boxer didn't feel that we should trust the local municipalities like we do the states, but that would have been a much better situation for the states. In 2005, I also authored language for the first time that got California 100% of the dollars we put to federal government for transportation came back to California. That's never been done. We usually get 82 or 83% of it. We got 100% of it. Also brought $195 million back for at-grade crossings. You saw about a third of that, 25% went to San Bernardino County, 25 to Riverside County, 25 to LA, and 25 to Orange. We're the only counties in the state that got that, and I offered the language to do that. So if you want to go to Congress and you want to get something done, it takes time. In the state, it's completely different. I was in the state legislature before term limits were enacted. I remember bills coming before committees that were in process 7, 8, or 9 years. Now you see bills being passed out by people coming in their first year. And I think it speaks for itself. It's horrible. It's become a house of amateurs. We've got some good people up there fighting and trying, but you look at the regulations and legislation coming out of Sacramento, it's devastating the state of California. Everybody's looking at it saying something's wrong. Something's got to be fixed. Now, Washington does move slower. I'll give you credit. It does. It takes a lot more time to get things done in Washington. But if you're going to get something done, you have to have seniority. You have to chair something. I'm chair of International Monetary Policy and Trade. Been very involved in currency exchanges with China, the European Union. I've had authority over the World Bank, from the IMF. There's some real issues in this world. We just passed a continuing resolution that will fund the nation for another 6 months to March. I voted no because it didn't deal with the money we send to Egypt and countries that are absolutely opposed to the United States. When they kill our ambassadors and they fight against this country, we should not give them foreign aid. Thank you.
Senator Dutton, would you like the next question or offer a rebuttal?
I'd like to take that one if I could. You know, I've spent the last 14 years listening to my constituents as an elected official here. I actually live here in the district. I didn't end up trying to change residency just so I could go run for a seat. If there's a problem and it can be fixed by reaching across the aisle, I'll do it. That's how we got SB 1186 fixed, and that's how we ended up taking care of some of the frivolous lawsuits that were being filed against the small businesses. And also, too, that's what happened with the transportation bond. You know, in 2005, the bond that was just referred to, unfortunately, those dollars actually got hijacked. There was originally $900 million, which was supposed to take care of the whole system all the way through the county. And the problem was, all of a sudden, it started disappearing. A lot of you probably heard about the bridge to nowhere and things of that nature. Well, that's what happened to the dollars. And I really want to thank David Dreyer, because I know he stepped up to the plate on that, too, to make sure that at least part of that money got put into put back into the program. And as I recall, the article I saw in the newspaper back in '05 was it was $155 million. The problem was that it left us short in what we needed to solve our problems here. And so I agreed to take the governor's transportation bond, was the author of that, and I put $3 billion in there for goods movement and for logistics dollars to actually make sure. And the only condition I said was that instead of stopping at the LA County line, I want to take it all the way to the state line, because that's what was fair. I worked on that with Nell Soda. She was a strong advocate with me to make sure that these dollars got put into these grade crossings so that we didn't see our citizens interrupted. And the Colton Crossing project that just ended up breaking ground, that was funded with that 1B money. That in Union Pacific was a matching dollars. We put $100 million into that project, which is just now being done. So I think, when it comes down to it, I don't really care. The seniority thing to me is kind of overrated a little bit. I understand that's usually what people will say, but when business in my districts were targeted, or when the county of San Bernardino was targeted, when Jerry Brown filed the lawsuits as Attorney General against our county, I actually went to war with Jerry Brown over that, and basically the budget may have gotten held up. I didn't intend that to happen, but the entire caucus backed my play, and we did get a resolve to that lawsuit. So I think I've stepped up to the plate. I haven't shied away from controversy or people's criticism or anything else. If I got to go fight and defend for the citizens of this district, I do so. I represent over 60% of the district now, and I'll give you everything I got if you send me back to Congress.
Congressman Miller, next question. How do you propose to address the economy as we move forward?
Well, I want to briefly respond to what Senator Dutton said, because he's not quite correct, because I'm the only Republican on the Transportation Committee in 2005 from California. It was $900 million originally. The Senate removed it the week before. And my colleagues and I got together and we tried to fight it, but we ended up with the amount we ended up with. But it was, I hate to say you say somebody else did it, but I was the only Republican on the committee that actually had that happen. When Obama took office, the economy had a GDP of 3.2% to 3.5. Today it has 1.2. You need to think about that. How do we address the economy moving forward? We can't raise people's taxes. We need to go back to about 2008 levels and say, what do we spend? At that point in time, we hadn't had stimulus. We hadn't had the other programs that they funded since then. We need to cap spending at those levels of 2008. And when you cap it, you keep it the same on the out years. You don't grow the spending. Now, that doesn't include the military, because defense has to be separate from the other spending. But you keep that constant. You allow the economy to grow back. When the economy outgrows those spending levels, you balance the budget, you start to pay down the debt, and the future looks better. But you cannot continue to spend money the way we've been spending it. You need to stabilize the housing market. As I go back and say, we've done everything wrong from the administration's perspective on the housing market. He's funded foreclosure programs that just didn't work. In fact, the FHFA, about 2 weeks ago, had a bulk sale of homes right here in our area. I authored a letter that 19 fellow members of Congress in our region here signed to that said, do not sell those houses, because they were selling them to Wall Street. What they did by selling the houses was they undercut the value of our homes in the region, and we have to deal with that in the future. Plus, if you go to every realtor in this district, everyone has a list of buyers on the board and not a list of homes for sales. They don't have the homes for sales. When I called FHFA and I said, DeMarco, what are you doing? I said, there's a huge demand in our area. And he said, well, I realize that the market's changed, but if we don't sell to the people we've bid the houses out to, we'll lose credibility. And my response was, are you worried about credibility? Are you worried about stabilizing the housing market and protecting taxpayers? You cannot continue to do that. In fact, those houses they said were for sale, 70% of those homes were never even put on the market for sale. 2001, authored language was sent to the Senate and said we need to define subprime lending versus predatory. Now, subprime is a good marketplace if it's handled properly. Predatory is when you can sign your name on the bottom of a form and they sell you the house without checking employment, credit history or whether you have the ability to repay them. Reid and the Senate pulled that language out 5 times. If we hadn't done that, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. On the Finance Service Committee, we're trying to change that. We're saying, how do we stabilize the market? How do you turn the economy? How do you get to move forward? You don't do it by doing things like that. You make it friendly for people, stabilize the housing market, and put people back
And I'm
to
sorry,
work.
Congressman, I have to obey our timekeeper. I have to obey our timekeeper. Senator Dutton, the next question. Both candidates have been labeled as a career politician. What is your definition of a career politician, and would you consider yourself one?
Well, I think, pretty simply, I think a career politician is, I guess I could say somebody who moves in order to continue to run for office, maybe change their residence. But bottom line comes down is that I've served, I believe in term limits. And I went ahead and made the pledge that was made back in the contract with America, the 6 terms, or 6 two-year terms. The nation's founding fathers did not envision that Congress would necessarily be a lifetime career. And same thing with the state legislature. Here recently, we also put into effect 12-year term limits for each of the houses of the legislature. There's something that happens when you're in office for a long period of time. You kind of lose touch of what's going on in your district. And it's a pretty easy thing to do. Or you become a little sarcastic and you become a little bit doubting about what you can and cannot do. My bottom line is, as far as I'm concerned, is I consider it to be a very honorable thing to be selected by your fellow citizens to represent them, to be their voice. I've always tried to do that to the best of my ability. And I think that in my case, I had a successful career for a period of time, made a choice to go in and be a public elected official as well, and try to take the benefit of my life experience and put it to everybody's good use. I did that when I was on the Chamber of Commerce. I've done that in the state legislature. I find it kind of hard to try to serve 2 masters at once. So, as far as personal business activities go, I put them down at the lower priority. My highest priority has always been the people I represent. I try to pride myself in being a citizen statesman, not a politician. To me, that's somebody who is concerned more about the next generation than they are about themselves or their next election. So once again, I think I've demonstrated myself my interest in trying to make sure that our needs are satisfied, and I hope that you'll support me.
Well, once again, Bob, you like to give me little digs like you've been doing in the paper.
I'm sorry, Congressman. But
I want to respond to his question.
well, that was actually the last of our questions and answers.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that.
Then I get to close.
But you are first in our closing remarks, in which each of you will have 2 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm giving our timekeeper just a second to reset his stopwatch. And now for each candidate's 2-minute closings, beginning with Congressman Miller. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me here today. If you've read the newspapers, you'll realize that I've never said one thing about my opponent, ever, in a negative fashion. My opponent does not respect me in the same fashion. He has done the same thing at numerous debates. But let's talk about career politicians. First of all, Bob, you need to read the law. You can live anywhere in the state of California and run for Congress. I chose to move to Rancho Cucamonga and live here, and I'm registered to vote here. When I ran for this office, you weren't running for it. In fact, Bob, I don't know what you were running for. You had an office holder account. You had a Bob Dutton for Assembly account 2012. You had a Bob Dutton for Supervisor account 2014. Now you opened a Bob Dutton for Congress account. Then last week you opened a Bob Dutton for Supervisor account 2018. Now that looks like a politician shopping for an office. So I've always held you in high respect. I've known your dad since the 80s. I've always considered you a colleague, and I've never spoke ill of you. But I'm not going to sit here publicly and allow you to jab me consistently. I have 1 campaign account, and I've had 1 campaign account for 14 years. It's Gary Miller for Congress. I'm proud to have represented San Bernardino County for 14 years. 3 of the 4 Republican supervisors at the county level have endorsed me. Why? Because when they need something done, they call me. And Josie Gonzalez, who's the chairwoman, when she needs something done in San Bernardino County, she calls me. So if we're talking about shopping for a seat, Bob, why don't you get rid of all the campaign accounts you have? I'm sure Mike Morrell and other people at the state level could use that money that you got from PACs in Sacramento and kept for yourself. But if you're really running,
I'm sorry.
if you're really running for Congress, why would you open a campaign account last week for Bob Dutton for Supervisor 2018? So if you want to trade barbs, why did you vote for 6 budgets in 9 years that have bankrupted the state of California? Now, I've always tried to be a gentleman. I've always tried to be polite, but you want to be negative. I never said one thing about you in the media or in the mail. I could have. I told you I wouldn't. But
Thank
of
you,
our
Congressman.
comments and our promises, I'm
Sorry,
the only one
Congressman,
who
that-
respected that.
That concludes our time.
Thank you.
And Senator, your 2-minute closing.
Well, first of all, Gary, these accounts are being changed, they're being closed, they're being consolidated. It's the law. There's nothing more I can do about that. Secondly, you keep referring to having it being endorsed by the California Chamber of Commerce. California Chamber of Commerce does not endorse federal elections. You can check it yourself. I did today to recheck it. I do have a 100% voting record with the Cal Chamber. I have a 100% voting record with the NFIB. Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association has endorsed me. You know, the bottom line comes down, no, you're right. I didn't move here to run. I didn't try to move down south to run for a seat. I didn't try to move out to the high desert to run for a seat. I live here. I've lived in this city since 1977. Didn't move just to accommodate that. And so I'm not going to apologize because I'm not moving around trying to find some place to land. The reality is that you're coming up here to run in a seat where you've actually got investments that you're taking place. I think it's highly questionable why a city member of Congress would want to go in and start doing some land developments and things like this, because I think it puts too much pressure on local elected officials. I don't do that, and I haven't done that. As a matter of fact, I put it on hold. And as far as bashing you, the only thing I've done is indicated that you're moving up from Diamond Bar, that you're moving up, that you've represented Orange County for the last 10 years. I haven't bashed you in any other, I haven't brought up any of the things that have been investigated or anything else. I haven't brought up any of that stuff publicly. So if you think that bashing is just because I'm questioning your sincerity to represent an area that you haven't lived in, then I apologize for that. I just didn't consider that to be bashing. And I apologize to all of you right now. Certainly didn't want to get into any of this. The bottom line comes down, we've got some serious issues. And this is a critical time. I think I'll fight really hard for you. Well, I know I'm going to fight really hard for you if you give me a chance. I'll promise you the same thing I did when you sent me to Sacramento. I'll give you the best I got. And you won't have to worry about where my loyalties
Senator,
are.
thank you very much. On behalf of the Rancho Cucamonga Chamber of Commerce in Southern California, Edison, I want to thank you, Congressman Miller, and you, Senator Dutton, for participating in our Congressional Candidates Forum.